Hey everyone, welcome to the Founders Foyer with me, Aishwarya. This foyer is full of conversations, the space where creators, founders, and builders can look for all the foundational concepts and support to grow their ideas into products. It's been a little over 6 months since I started this project, and honestly, it's so much of learning that I've got, both interacting with folks like you from the community, where you've been telling me the number of new concepts that you've all been picking up from the episodes, as well as the guests that I've had on the show. Because the whole intent of starting this show was for me to not only just learn by myself, but also put these concepts out and just learn together as a community. So a lot of us might think that, okay, well, there are a lot of things to learn from social media, from the other interviews out there. So this is something that I tell the folks that I bring on the show as well, that the reason to run the Founders Foyer is for early stage ideas, for folks like me, like you, who are, let's say, having a full-time job and who also love building stuff, or who are trying to convert something from being a side project to something bigger, something grander. And most of these talks or interviews that we listen to online are always around scaling things up, are always around running big mission or like running grand products. But all of those definitely start with smaller ideas, and it definitely needs a lot of effort and execution and consistency. So I wanted to create that space where early stage builders, folks who are currently operators, who are currently in different product streams, who have formerly been in that early stage space and who have done something, shipped something, launched something out, to talk about their experiences, to basically share with us candidly about things that went right, the things that didn't go well, and also the amount of, let's say, whether it's like hardships or whether it's success, whatever it is, I wanted them to share it with us. And I thought it's a great way for us to learn from each other's stories. So that's the whole crux of running the Founders Foyer. And I think when I started out, it was like 2, 3 episodes, but down the line, having about 18 people join me and a bunch of others who are waiting for the next year, it's such a humbling experience. When I get to talk to folks who I've really admired, I've like really wanted to have a chat with them and like to actually have them on the show. So thanks for them, and thanks to all of you as well to keep supporting me on this journey. So I thought that it'll be a good walking through the memory lane to go back and see what we've learned, like what I've personally learned from these shows, and what concepts that we've picked from. Because we've had like creators, we've had product leaders, we've had founders on the show talking about their experiences. So I thought it's a good thing to summarize some of these topics on the whole and like go through each of those to understand what did we pick. So over to just running through the whole memory lane and then trying to get to each of these concepts. So yes, this is like a quick snapshot of the folks that I've like had on the show. And honestly, like every time I see this, it gives me like goosebumps, and also like it keeps me up for the journey forward, because it's definitely great to bring people's stories out and to basically like let them speak to the community. And not a lot of them get the time and the effort to be able to talk to a wider product community. And trust me in saying that all of us have these burning questions within us. All of us who are passionate about building something always have these questions around what should I do, how should I start, and I'm doing this thing, but is it good enough, is it great, is it okay for me to push through? So I think that is the basic theme of me running the show, and also like me talking to these folks and even them sharing some of their stories, because they're also invested in helping folks like us. So yes, going on to, I remember that when I like started the show, I first thought, okay, let's bring like a certain path to these concepts. Like let's start with something that's more around how to pick the right ideas, how to navigate ideas, going on to like building them out, and then going on to shipping and launching them. So when it came to navigating ideas, I remember that one of the very first folks that came to my mind was Ravi Mehta, because I know he has served in the product space for long enough, and he was just venturing out as a founder, trying to like work on his early stage idea and trying to build a startup around it. So I thought like he being the best person, and always he gets questions around product strategy, but to me I was like, okay, wait, I want to get this side of Ravi, where he is great with tinkering around ideas and like trying to zero in on one idea and trying to build for that. And he was exactly doing that with his startup. So when I got Ravi into the show, one of the best things that was there in Ravi's episode was the kind of framework that he had already developed after serving in the product space for so many years. So when you deal with product strategy for products like Tinder, for Meta, and all of those former experiences that he brought with, he was able to solidify a certain plan around how should you navigate through these early stage ideas. How do you know what works, and what kind of experiments you should be running? Because you might have a lot of ideas, but like how do you go about knowing which are the ones that you should spend the most effort on? So I remember that the episode that I had with him was a lot around techniques and frameworks, and coming in from that kind of a background, I think it was very contextual in that sense for Ravi to talk about all of that. So definitely that was one great episode that spoke around how to pick the right ideas to work on. And also I remember that when I had Amy on another episode, we spoke around how to embrace fear. Because a lot of us being side project creators, a lot of us being founders, early stage founders, we have this innate imposterish fear in us to know, okay, am I going in the right path? Like, do I know what I'm doing? And is there like some validation that I should look out for? And often we get stuck in this loop. And I think embracing that fear and the whole, I remember a greater chunk of that episode was around why fear is so natural and the kind of steps that you can take to navigate that fear and come around it and sort of use that to your strength. So, and Amy being in the product leadership space, she's coached so many founders. She's also had stints with her experiences at Google. So she's worked with so many passionate product folks like us, and she's seen a lot of people work in and out through their startups and the kind of challenges and difficulties that they get to deal with. So that episode was definitely an eye opener for anything around how to embrace fears and basically like how to deal with burnout. And when you are just overwhelmed with a lot of things on your plate, how do you go about prioritizing? How do you go about knowing, okay, yeah, let me take this up, let me work on this, and let me follow this up? So it was very actionable in that sense. And going on to another episode that I really enjoyed doing is Lisa Kostova. She was also from a very similar space where she runs a program for mid-career women. And she's also from the product leadership space. So she knows a lot around what happens in the corporate ladder, what really people work towards, like whether it's a big promotion or whether it's transitioning to a different career space. One of the main concepts that I also still quote to a lot of people that I picked from her when I spoke to her was the concept of identities. When we start something new, whether it's like, we pick up a new project or whether we go to a new role, we just feel like, fish out of water, where like, we have all of these doubts around how do I picture myself through it? How do I shape my work around this? So this identities as a concept was the first time that I listened from her, where she said how when she gives like talks and when she goes to these conferences, when she has to deliver a talk, she often puts the mindset of Oprah. She often considers herself to match Oprah's identity around, okay, how would she do it? How would she approach a certain problem? How would she look at it? And what kind of things would run in her mind? And I think that's very powerful. And you don't always have to think about like a personality in the sense that you don't always have to go with like somebody that is super great in the market or somebody who's like super high and put on a pedestal over there. But you can also think about how would your peer deal with this? How would your immediate friend, somebody that you look up to, think about this challenge? How would they navigate this? So in a crux, the idea is very simple. It's just trying to step out of your own head and see how would another person pragmatically approach this situation. What kind of decisions would they make, and what would run in their mind, and what would your immediate trust circle do when they are faced with such a situation? So every time I talk to somebody around this concept, or like I try to do something new, I always come back to this identities concept, and it's stuck to my head so much that I would really love for all of listeners here to go back to that episode and listen to how identities can actually shape the way that you think your step forward. So all of these contribute to when you're working on new ideas, because dealing with new ideas and having to like take them up until launching them is a tedious process. So it's important that we take it step by step, and it's important that we try to address it part by part and not look at the whole thing and just get overwhelmed. So these are like just the top 3 episodes that come to my mind when I think about navigating ideas. So over to the next concept, the next big concept here, which is side projects. So which is even me doing this show, right? It's a side project for me. So I know a lot of people that I talk to who just enjoy the day job and who also enjoy equally building something on the side, something that they would love to venture into and learn new things. And that was also the theme for me when I started running this project. Like when I started the Founders Foyer, for me, the goal was not around, not just around focusing on early stage founders, but also folks who are side project creators, because for them, this is a foundership, a sort of foundership, right? And you run this, you put in a lot of effort and time into this. So how could some of these lessons help creators like you and me? And like, what are the things that we have to go through to run something on our own, to basically cross a lot of these questions that we have in our mind and move through? So I think the first person I would like to quote is Grace Gong. So Grace is somebody that I met on LinkedIn, and she was also a fellow LinkedIn creator. And we went through the LinkedIn Creators Program, she in the US and me in India. So I think I got connected to her through that link. And ever since that, I enjoyed the content that she puts through, because what struck me is the kind of consistency that she had with respect to quality content. And being a creator it's not very easy, right? Because what you consume as well. I still remember in that episode, we spoke a lot around how much important it is for a creator to consume the right things to be able to talk about the right things. So often it's just the picture that comes out, right? It's often, okay, who do you bring on the show and what kind of things you talk on the show? But before that, you need to have a lot of inputs yourself. You need to do a lot of research yourself to be able to bring that kind of a quality conversation forward. So that is something that I found a connect with Grace for, because I enjoyed how she effortlessly brought in so many leaders on her show. She used to talk to these founders, CEOs, and it was never from the picture of, hey, you need to do these grand things to be able to run a show. It was often from a very simple idea, and that kind of scrappiness is something that I really liked with Grace. So in our episode, we even spoke about how this kind of a scrappiness came for her right when she was running the school project, where they had to put together a magazine, and she was like very hands-on with like working on the entire outline and basically like being very entrepreneurial right from that time, where you just like take up a school project. And she kind of realized that she had a thing for working together with the team, running something on her own when she did that school project. So from then to actually starting a podcast or writing books or like being a LinkedIn top voice for finance. And oh my God, she has like a lot of things on her plate. And all of this was possible because there was that connect that she found, that she had this interest and she was willing to put time and the kind of effort around that. So I for me, running a side project, when people think about it, they often see that, okay, well, like it's just time balance, right? And it's just a lot around, you work and you manage your time. But when Grace and I spoke, I remember we spoke a lot around energy as well. Like, how do you manage your energies? What ignites you? Like, what makes you do this? So I think it's important whether you're working on your own, you're working with CEOs, you're working with whoever it is around the world, the kind of consistency and the information diet that you consume are like very important for running a side project. So that's something that you can look out for in the episode that I had with her. And over to John, who runs Leland, and it's a startup that I've been like closely watching for over about 2.5 years now. And like with John, I think the reason that I wanted to bring John on the show is because I saw how Leland went from being an idea to actually a great community and bringing in so many other folks. Like the whole business model was around running a marketplace. At the same time, they were doing this content engine that was neatly matching their whole marketplace kind of a model. And knowing John over years now, for me, I thought it's a great way to let folks who are working on their side projects understand that it is possible to convert something that is more like a side idea to something that just sustains and runs on its own as a startup. So I think for John, he mentioned in our show like how the concept for Leland came from one of the other consulting side projects that he did, where he just used to help people break into the right career roles. He just used to give them concepts and support around what really sticks with them, what really works out for them. And then he realized that a lot of people were craving for that, and like a lot of people wanted help with doing something on their own, and that's how the idea for Leland came through, and like how he was able to map and bring the parallels from, let's say, a different startup idea to what he's currently doing. So like anything that you do, like any interaction that you have with people, anybody that you meet, let's say over a work conference or at your office or even at a fun event, all of these can actually connect to dots. And that's something that I really picked up with John when he had our show. So for sure that you folks can check that out to know how to get those parallels right. And same thing with Sonia and Blake. So Sonia and Blake are like I remember the three of us used to get on calls to like when I was helping them out with Kernel, which is a platform for creators and founders to like pitch their idea, like stay accountable to their idea by just forming a community and like posting about your updates. I remember how we used to often connect and chat about what it takes to take an idea from napkin math, like just like abstract stuff, to being accountable. So, like each step, it's important to know where you're going towards, and it's important to know like how much of it is working and how much of it you need to step back, look, and make changes. So the kind of accountability partner and the kind of community that you want to build your early set of believers, I think that is something that we spoke on our episode, where even when it's a side project, it's important for you to always get that micro and macro lens right, where you just go all in and you put the effort, but at the same time, after every bit of stuff that you do for your project, it's important to like get a bit macro and see, okay, what are the things that are going right, and how else can I get help from others? And like this getting help from others is something that we often don't do because, we are like, oh, like, I can just handle it all. And honestly, I used to be that kind of a person as well, but opening up to people, trying to seek feedback, trying to get suggestions from people really changed the game for me, not just for the Founders Foyer, but at work and doing my other things on the side as well. So I think that was a very important episode for having to establish that power of like seeking feedback and like trying to have that accountability partners, your own board of directors sort of phrase. So that would really help a lot of side project folks like us. And the other thing I remember from talking to Nazuk, whom I really enjoyed. Like I was following Nazuk for a long time on Instagram, and I think after that, when we connected, we just had a lot of things to talk in parallel about. First off, for starters, I think both of us are from the product management space, but not just that. I think with Nazuk, what I found is she was this amazing creator who had the consistency with posting like things that not just like it was not just a kind of a one-way conversation where she just keeps putting things out, but I often found people connected with her. People used to ask her questions, like her stories and like the kind of content that she put forward had people engaging with her. And I felt like that is very important for a lot of early stage founders and a lot of side project creators to understand how do you build that two-way bridge with your initial set of community. Like, and for that matter, how do you even build a community? So, and she was somebody who was like a product lead in her like day job, and she was doing this on the side. So this kind of work-life balance, or I would even say work-project balance, because both of these are like equal weightage when it comes to somebody who's just like interested in a lot of ideas. So Nazuk's episode, I think, was more relatable on a lot of planes, and especially not just product, but also a lot from being creators and being this person who would want to given the best across all of these platforms. All right. So yeah, I think those episodes were definitely a few things that you can check out if you are a side project creator, or you are just somebody who's starting to do a side project and you would like want a lot of inputs around how do you navigate it, how do you go about building something on your own, and like those are some reference episodes for you to check through. The next is like product market fit, and this is not just with respect to like large products that you work on, but I think it's also for small ideas. It's also for those experiments that you run through. It's important that you find right audience to support your work, right? And a lot of it is very difficult in the early stage, I think, which is why I wanted to throw in a lot of light around what it means to market what you do, and what like how do you pitch a good story, and what is storytelling like for founders, especially when you're a solopreneur. Like when you run the show on your own, a lot of it can be like just bottling you, because you're like, okay, wait, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do that as well. So this can be like pretty quickly transcending to a height where you just lose sight of the main things. So one of the crux for product market fit was like, I wanted to bring in people who can talk about the power of storytelling. And that's when I had my fangirling moment, because I had April Dunford on the show. So April was this great person. And I still remember in April's episode, I was just like awestruck. I was basically like going on full on smiles. I am not kidding. I was laughing my heart out, because so many contextual examples, so many anecdotes that she brought through to say what positioning is like. Because positioning can be such a jargon for somebody who doesn't know, who doesn't come from the product space, can just feel like, okay, wait, what is she talking about? But April made it sound super interesting and like very, very contextual, because she brought in a lot of how she worked with her clients and the kind of good and bad examples that one should know. She just made the whole conversation very candid. So I remember laughing my heart out, and a lot of people who pinged me later to say thanks for bringing April on the show. I think it was one of the best things that happened to the show when I had her on the show, and she was just absolutely great with that kind of an engagement that I'm talking about. Like how do you understand what to like do to position your product well, and if you're working on new ideas, how do you know what to do and what not to do? I think that's like a go-to episode for like masterclass on B2B marketing, and basically like how do you get your storytelling right. And same thing that goes with Andy Raskin as well, because I know Andy has really made this phrase strategic narrative more like it's like getting a patent over the phrase. And he's like this go-to person. Like when you follow his LinkedIn posts, you can see how much he works with top CEOs and founders on getting that strategic narrative right. So for me, it was important for creators and founders to know what it means to build that narrative, because like it's very easy to talk about storytelling from just outside perspective, where we say, okay, there's Apple, there's that, there's this, and like it's easy to give examples of great storytelling brands and products. But when it comes to nailing it down to the kind of steps that you should do to match it up with your product, like let's say you're building something and then like all of these examples don't match to what you're building, then how do you go about building your own narrative? So I wanted to bring in Andy to touch upon those aspects, where he brought in so many good examples, not just with like popular brands like Salesforce, but he also tried to talk about like how Gong, or how smaller startups that he worked with, they were able to completely change their narrative, which is not just a one person's job, right? Like it's something that you've got to get all of your teammates together to do. So that episode was particularly interesting, because he spoke more from the lens of not just like a single person, but like how do you do together with the team? Like when you have people on different planes, how do you bring them all together to get a single story right for your idea, or like for your startup? So I think Andy's episode was great in that context. And of course, Emily Tate, that was one other episode I enjoyed for a lot of reasons, particularly because Emily, she manages this great community, Mind the Product, which is like a renowned global community of product managers. And it's not very easy to run a community like that because it's the kind of mission that you impart is not just you bringing your own product experiences, but how do you keep it very dynamic? How do you make it more relevant to the newer times? And with Emily's episode, I remember we spoke about how product market fit was a thing way back when she started out in the product management space. It was not a jargon. It was basically like people did it. People did it before even like claiming these terms. And fast forward to now, how people talk about a lot of product market fit and founder fit and like getting your early believers right. So we spoke about how these contrasting lenses were, like what it meant to run a product show back then to like running a team right now, building a product right now. And we touched about beyond product market fit, what it means to be a founder market fit. I vividly remember how she said, it's okay if you're a founder and like, let's say you work on something for about 2 months, 3 months, and you don't personally connect to it. It's absolutely okay to step back and say, hey, like I think I'm not the right person to do this. And it can seem very scary, but like for me, I think that was very important moment because often when you don't personally connect with what you do, it's important to step back and say, okay, maybe I'm not the right person, and maybe there are like others to solve this for. And when you know this set of others to solve this for, it's either great when you want to partner with them, or it's great you want to step back from this idea and move to another idea. It's absolutely okay. So that was a very important lesson that Emily brought with in our show. When she spoke about how to build the early believers around your idea. So it's a definite check out if you want to learn product management techniques, and more so around like validating your idea with your early set of believers. Yep, that's like a wrap up around product market fit. The next thing is to go a little deeper into product management. I know we already spoke a bit around it, but going a bit deeper into product management and building products and anything around PM as a concept. Again, bringing in Emily, I think we just spoke about Emily's episode in detail. Another person that I enjoyed having on the show was Jared Spool. So with Jared, I think he was doing user experience even before UX was a term. Like imagine 25 years back to do this when the field was not even created for this, when it was not even like a career option of its own. So with Jared, I think it was great because he made everything sound very practical. Like I remember when in our episode, I didn't really expect him to like quickly do like a napkin math there. When I was just asking him a question, he was like, oh yeah, yes, Aishwarya. And then he just started talking and he quickly started drawing things out. He was like marking things like how you would do when you sit down with a person in a cafe and basically like write things down. So that was like super practical for me on the show, where he spoke about how do you craft user experiences. Like how do you make user experience as a part of a company's product strategy. So that was a very important episode for showing the practicality of an otherwise jargonish term, right? Like user experience. So definitely check that episode out for a lot of drawings and a lot of skills around it. And oh yeah, Shyvee is another fellow LinkedIn person. Like she works for LinkedIn as well, but like yeah, she's a creator that I met on LinkedIn, and I definitely found her content something that went more well with what I do with the Founders Foyer as well. The intent of running the show was very similar with the PM Learning series that she was running. So I remember when I brought in Shyvee and we had this whole conversation, it just didn't feel like we were recording the show, because it was more like two PMs just chatting with each other to just share our own learnings. So with Shyvee, what I really like is how she throws light on specific concepts. Like, when you ask her a question, there's always like 3 things, 5 things, and there's like always like a narrow down to what you need to know at the end of listening to it. So she articulates it so well that you understand the answer to any question that you might ask her with. So particularly watch out that episode for the PM skills and what should you do when you are in your early career product management. And let's say whether it's your job or whether like most of founders themselves are PMs in the beginning, right? And when you're running a show on your own, it's important to know what to do and what not to do. And especially if you're from EdTech, because Shyvee is from the LinkedIn learning background. So if you're from EdTech, I think it's a definite episode to watch out for. And the two of the other great people that touchwood I spoke to on the show, Alan Holub. If you follow Alan on Twitter, you know he's this go-to person when it comes to agile and software building, and like he's a seasoned expert who's been in the space, who's advised so many companies, so many founders. He's consulted for a lot of startups. He served as a CTO in these startups, and to be able to like just take a leaf out of his whole wide gamut of experience was such a humbling experience for me. When I spoke to him, he just had so many things to offer. So like in our show, I remember that we spoke about what it means to like when people say let's just build things fast and like let's just break the rules. What does it mean to actually contradict that? Because a lot of us, in the name of building fast, we actually build wrong things. So he neatly brought about the change in terms of building fast does not equate to building wrong things, does not equate to running experiments just for the sake of it. But he brought through the importance of what it means to like be very agile with not just as a methodology, but like the whole way that you run, just not as a mindset, but just being there and like shipping something out as quickly as possible to get feedback from the audience, because ultimately it's whom you're building for. So that episode, I think the whole of 1 hour that we spent was a lot around how to ship impactful software and how do you like when you're a team of designers, product managers, and especially if you're a new founder and you're trying to hire a lot of these people, you might just be boggled because each of them can be on a very different plane. Your designer can have a very different idea. Your developers can just like be on a very different plane, and like you just like, how do I get them all together? So some of what Alan shared was talking about how do you get a shared perspective, and like how should you always keep your customers and like these experiments that you run, how users are the most important people that you should have in your focus, and like how do you align all of these people into a single picture. So it's a go-to episode if you want to learn about building better software. And my favorite, Aarthi, and for all of you who know how Aarthi started out her career in Microsoft and then going on to founding 2 startups on her own. So for her, being a PM, a lot of her operator journey helped her with like running 2 startups as well. And in our episode, we discovered this whole journey about how being a product manager at Microsoft, followed by Netflix and followed by Meta, basically helped apply some of those product strategies and apply some of those structural concepts to running a show on her own, like running a team, and basically like how do you build and ship a product when especially you're working on tight deadlines, when you are like also responsible for fundraising and a lot of other things that are outside of your expertise area. And I remember in our episode we spoke about how if your strength is in a particular space, let's say like you're a founder, like and you come from a product background, always double on like basically like put your entire focus on that strength that you have, getting help for rest of the other things in parallel, because what is your like strength, you double down on that and you basically like get through all the other lenses, right? Because the rest of the things are like new things that you have to learn. So that episode was particularly interesting to apply the PM concepts. It's just not going to be on that job, but something that's beyond the job. So, yep. And yeah, this is another interesting section to talk about growth. Growth from both product and career space, because I know when we had Casey, and trust me when I say this was the most listened show, most listened episode on the show, because Casey just had so many things to share. And for me, I still remember in our conversation, I just kept on having more questions to ask him, because every conversation, every snippet that he ended with, led to another interesting question. And I was like, okay, wait, like, do I ask him this? Do I have to continue the conversation this way? It was just like mind boggling. And with Casey, he brought in a lot of experience from GrabUp, Pinterest, and Eventbrite as well. So a lot of techniques around how do you build network effect, how do you build growth loops, and basically like what does it mean to work on the product growth area, especially again, like to quote the prior experiences, how do you do something when it was not even a thing of its own back then? So like, and also like I think one of the things that we touched upon was how do you monetize something that you build for? And this is $1 million question that most of us have when we're running this idea of our own, right? Like, should I charge for this? When should I charge? How should I charge? Is it even right to charge? So that episode was a go-to for all things product growth, for all things scaling something from scratch, from ground up. So Casey's blogs as well is like a go-to if you just want, if you're somebody who loves subscribing. I think like I would say Casey's blogs and this particular episode is definitely a checkout for you. And yes, and with Padmini, I remember Padmini is like a very close friend of mine, and I know the kind of struggles that she had to, like the challenges that she had to face when she quit her product career and she started up on her own with building Mind and Moms. So she was a go-to person for me when I had to like talk to somebody about how do you basically convince somebody to come and join you, because when you're just starting out, you are the only person. And what does it mean to find a co-founder? Like, how can you even like know somebody is right for you, somebody who believes in the mission just as much as you do? And how do you build a career out of being a founder? How do you meet your co-founder? How do you convince people to join your firm? I think this particular section on our show, she spoke about how it's not very easy to find somebody that you believe in, and like you might have a lot of ego clashes, you might have a lot of difference in thought, but how and why product is always the first thing that you should put your focus on, despite of all the change in plans, or despite all the egoistic like attitudes that one might have towards running a company. So and also like questions around how do you legalize something that you do, like how do you incorporate. I think that was definitely a good episode to check out if you are actually serious about getting your idea to the next stage, which is like building a startup of your own around. Definitely listen to Padmini talk about her experiences. And bringing back John again, I think we touched about how running a marketplace, growing a marketplace was a challenge, because it's easier to say, oh, you run a marketplace, but it's two different business models together, right? Like it's two different target audiences to deal with, like the supply side and the demand side. So I think John gave like a front seat for us to know what it means to run the show for both sides, how to achieve that kind of a right balance, and how do you get growth when you have to focus on both of these target audiences. So that was pretty interesting about another thing to add on to John's show. And another favorite of mine was Marissa's episode, because just search for remote work. I think the first name you would get on Twitter or LinkedIn or any social media for that matter is Marissa, because like she is somebody who talks and gives a lot of like firsthand experience into the hybrid remote work even before it became a thing during pandemic. Like I think a lot of us knew what it means to work remotely only during pandemic, but with Marissa's experiences, she's been running this the whole consulting, and there's a whole space to help founders do remote work even before it was actually a thing. So with Marissa's episode, I remember this work forward approach that we spoke, because a lot of us have this question, what is the future of work? And especially when you're a founder, you have a lot of employees working for you and you're very, very early stage. There are a lot of questions you can have around what's the right way for me to build a team? Like, and what's the right culture that I should be setting for my team? And is it something that is so toxic? Is it something that people would believe in and come and join me? So I think that episode was definitely good for a lot of burning questions that you may have around how do you sustain a company? How do you build and sustain a company in the so-called hybrid remote times, and also in the future of work times? Because definitely we've had like a steep change in the way people work, and the priorities people might have when it comes to doing their day job and also running something on their side, or having other work-life priorities. So that is an episode, I would say, to talk all things about work forward approach. And yes, back to another specific creator and content economy kind of a space. Um, Once again, quoting Nazuk there, I think you can check out her content on Instagram. And I think one of the things that we spoke about is how do you build a community. So it's easy when we say like, hey, you have 100 followers, so it means building a community is easy, right? But trust me, going from zero to like even a bunch of 100 odd followers on my YouTube channel was like a thing of a lot of effort and a lot of consistency, right? And that's the same thing with any creator. So it's also beyond what you just optimize for. I think you have to believe in what you run, like the kind of mission that you want your thing to have. So building a community is beyond just looking at numbers. So in our episode, we covered the point about how it's just going beyond looking at metrics, but more to do with that belief in connecting with people, in trying to give them something of value. And so was quoting Sonia and Blake again. We spoke about the trends to watch out for, especially with this whole no code, Web3, crypto, and off late the whole AI into picture. How do you optimize for what you should be building? So that is something we did on the show. The other thing with Amy and the episode we had around embracing your fears is also the whole anecdote around how you should build a self vision and what it means to think ahead. Like, what would your future self do to be able to navigate the challenges of the current times? So, how do you build? Like, I think it's very similar with Lisa's the identity thing that I was telling you. So, how do you build a picture of this person in your mind? And this person is you, basically the future you. And what are the things that you should be doing that your future self would be happy about, your future self would not really be happy about, and basically using that as a rationale for your decision making of the current times. So that is something that I felt is very important for creators to invest the time and energy in the right things to work on. And I think Shyvee also brought out a very good example of what it means to be champion. Like, if it's not always a single person effort, right? You need to have somebody to support you, whether it's your mentor or whether it's somebody that you know in the space that you're working out for. You need to have somebody who invests the amount of the same vision that you have in you, in trying to help you grow, trying to help you find the right opportunities. So as a creator, she was trying to talk about how she was championed by a lot of people at work. And the last section for this whole the pack journey that we had is about mindset, models, and patterns. So this largely, combines techniques, frameworks, and in general, like the creative thoughts that people had, which is very interesting, which is something that we can incorporate. So again, bringing, I think, a bunch of folks that we already saw before, like with Jared, like I told you, he brought a very practical sense into how do you measure the right metrics. And like, why write metrics? It's from user experience, because user experience is very subjective. So how do you map something that's very quantitative with a qualitative thing and like sort of connect both together? And that was a particularly interesting nugget that we discussed on the episode. So over to also like, how do you think about culture setting? How do you basically know this is the culture that you need to be forming, for which you need to have the right mindset as a founder? So that is something that Padmini covered in her episode. And with Aarthi, one of the things that she spoke, and I felt like, oh my God, it's just so spot on. It's the whole finite versus infinite game. Like, do you play to win, or do you play to really help each other out in the community? Like, what's the thing for you in the longer run? Do you do something because you expect something in return, or like, should you have a mindset that just basically goes beyond just like a, like a, not a zero sum game, but looking at it more from a, I want to do this because I believe in this community. I want to do this because I just want to give it back and help people just for the sake of it, not expecting anything in return. So it's a very interesting concept to think, especially when you're in the tech space, because often as people in tech, we get benefited from our fellow friends, our fellow peers who take that liberty to introduce us to new people, to champion us, to help us, and like be very supportive with everything that we do. So that is a very interesting mindset as a concept that we discussed in Aarti's episode. And oh yeah, with Felix, Felix runs ADP List, which is one of those greatest communities that you can join when you want to be mentored or you want to be a mentor for fellow folks. You just want to share what you've learned from your experiences. And as a mentor on ADP List, I think I was super happy when I was able to like bring in Felix on my show, where we spoke about how running a community and company as a movement is very important, not looking at it more as a transactional relationship, but looking at it more as what is a purpose, what is a change that I want to bring about in running this. And like, why should, like, I still remember how he used to say that he doesn't call users, he doesn't call them as customers. He says like, I want my fellow mentees, I want my fellow mentors and mentees. So there's like this terminology that he gives to people who believes in his movement, and not just treat them as like in a very third person perspective, but like going beyond and thinking them as just a part of your company, and like making them believe in your vision just as much as you do. So that was definitely like a great thing that we discussed on the show. So yeah, I think overall we just went through product growth, ideas, community, and a lot of things that like snippets and nuggets that we had from each person's show. So what I highlighted here is basically like what I like remembered from each episode that I had. And of course, with every episode, which spans from 30 minutes to 1 hour, we just had like so many things going on. And with one person, you get so many different angles to think through at the end of the day. So I hope like this gave I mean, for me, it was definitely a good thing to think through all of this and see, oh my God, I've like discussed so much with like my fellow peers and people that I look up to. So I also hope that this gave for even the new listeners a sort of context to where to begin and what kind of episodes to listen to, especially when you have something to immediately look for and learn. And as well as folks who've been following, it's like a good ride down the memory lane to see what are the things that we've looked up so far for the Founders Foyer. And like, yeah, please keep telling me new things that you want to learn about, and which will help me bring the right kind of people on the show as well. So thank you so much, and looking all forward to 2023 to learn some new amazing things and to also bring interesting folks on the show. Thank you.